Chapter 7. Liar, liar, hair of fire. Horror chased her, bodies torn by heat, Quatan laid to waste, and the fate of Twind growing more certain by the step. Despite the sickness of Sangar, despite the blood upon her cheeks, the loss of Quet's moss, and the revelation of Arek's continual deceptions, Reyth allowed herself to feel guilty, and gulped down the sights of Sangar thawing early under Uyu's clean warmth. The trek calmed her, tucking down her anger. She'd need it soon, so she ran through a list in her mind, stoking the embers of fury despite exhaustion creeping over her. Scylla, the creature, Arek, the Dark Ones herself, all deserving of her hate, but Arek first and foremost. Although she led the way, she had to match Gregor's cautious pace lest she walk into darkness. She could not ask him why or how he had healed her, why when she wandered far her sight went, why when he neared it returned, why the blaze curled about him, or why the apparition of an owl had collapsed upon its attack. So many questions she couldn't ask as they had to move in total silence to avoid the 9-man patrols of beetle-helmed warriors combing for them. Warhounds or apparitions like the green-eyed devils adjoined each team. Gregor said the owl-like totems were no concern. If they stuck together, Gregor said they'd be imperceptible. She couldn't ask why that was either. The hounds, however, bigger than even the dog people's own, were monsters with black teeth and fat scorpions' tails that glistened with venom. To conceal their scents she took them through the river, but Jor's trick failed when she found all the gullies dry as dust. So Gregor had them cover themselves in soot instead. As Uyu crested the sky, they skirted Twind, unable to draw closer than the far periphery. The entire woodland had been razed to ash and offered clear lines of sight for the dark and muzzled figures digging through the remains of lost lives and tossing corpses into carts. Maybe some had escaped. At camp on their second night, under EU's glaring sky, he let them speak at last.
You're Reyth, then, eh? Arek's family.
And ye his eshi, na? Reyth said, hesitating upon the term of endearment. She squeezed into the dark nook of their sodden shelter, glad they'd face the night without a campfire. Any more flames would do her in.
Gregor is fine. You're about to ask how it is you can see again, no?
Gregor said. Her eyes felt so young, so uncontrolled, they betrayed her intent. Too dark to discern details, he displayed the bundle for her to see it better anyway.
This is my feather, Gestalt. Under the flag is the moulded form of an immaculate one. Within her presence, unnatural things wilt away. I suspect your ailment to be artificial, but in the darkness I cannot confirm. When we find safety, I can draw more certainty upon deeper investigation.
Can I hold it? She asked.
You may not.
He answered.
After all, would you let me hold your bow? Arek has told me it was your mother's, right? And her mother's?
Reyth had neither considered nor realized she gripped the yew with such strength. She shook. Reyth didn't like to hear Arek betraying her secrets. Burying her face against her knees, she shrugged him off. He'd not answered fully, so neither would she. He hid something, so could not be trusted.
Where I'm from, few things, especially weapons, have such storied histories, though there are exceptions.
He chuckled and tucked the cloth away. And me uncle, he tell you our history? Reyth asked.
He has, and I think he wishes to make amends.
Don't I speak of him any more, Reyth snapped. I wanted to ask you a few other things instead.
Very well, but you asked, and know too he isn't in good health. Who knows how long a grudge has against something like that?
Wraith considered kinder words, but his insistence on defending Arek encouraged her spite. Why are you people coming to Sangar? Gregor nodded as if she'd asked a fair question, but instead of answering he offered rations from his pack and water from his metal water skin. A canteen, he called it. The food was meat, which tasted more like minerals, and cheese that tasted more like rot. As they ate in the cold, snow fell outside their shelter of sticks and shrubs. Beetles scurried like lice in her hair and on her clothes. For a gentleman, the little crawlies seemed to get under his skin.
Most come in the pursuit of wealth, I'm afraid. Or for honor. As it happens, your home lies in a fault line of a divided world, It's too much to explain now, but the gist is, your ancestors, the Rukanians, come from a large land to the west, and on most maps claim this all to be theirs.
What are maps? What are Rukanians? Reyth flicked a beetle at him, but even cramped, he dodged it. I am Malvis and Yelt. I am Twish.
Of course, I meant no offence, but before there were Hupes, Kyr, Twish, or, what was it, Malvis, there were the tribes of Rook, become the kingdom, become the empire, become the sick old man wanting for things he regrets losing.
I don't understand, Reyth wondered aloud. Are you of Ruk too?
My ancestors. Absolutely. I'm a Velkan of Velka, just as you are all those things you said. Shapes change, and as water becomes a cloud, Velkans were once Rook too. We've a shared heritage, if you can believe it.
Are that Dark Ones Rook too? When he shook his head, she giggled in glee.
Funny, is that?
Just glad that all things you say that make no sense, something does. If I am what I am and they are naw, then we are naw the same. They are Dark Ones. They are evil and we are good.
They are people.
Gregor said. The subtle but scathing tone in his voice crawled under her skin and flipped her over like bark to reveal the skittering insects and rampant fungi beneath. The exposure his admonishment had laid upon her took shape as shame of the ashes under nails, the fleas in her hair, the blood under her eyes. Then he went on.
But their hegemons, the professors of the Starlight Council, are not. The people of the Savant serve sorcerers and sorcery. At birth they collect the blood of the newborn and enforce contracts of obeisance between the infant and the Skycrasher, king of Ugulu. These take many forms, but most often it is simply service or death. My close friend, O, is an extreme example of such an arrangement, but so too are those who attacked Quatan. For their civility, Rooks call them serviles, or even less flatteringly, skooks. A terrible word, never use it.
A Starlight Council? She asked, searching the gaps of their cover for the stars, but dark clouds hid tonight's freckles. Like the elders of the Dark Ones?
Quite more than elders, they are ageless, though I'm afraid their true nature is a bit too complicated for idle chatter. To say they exist anywhere above or around, they are elsewhere, where I am not sure men can reach.
Are they Naw people too? Reyth pointed her snide remark to bite back for his earlier scolding. Gregor didn't take to her sass as she'd hoped.
Depends on how you look at it. Arik says your speaker had pointed ears, fangs, and unending life. I suspect she is like they once were, and have ceased to be. They are of the endless kind and are no longer of this world.
Are they like the Firemaker? He had powers like Scylla too, but even she could not make fire. No one can make fire.
Sure they can.
Now it was his turn to dig sarcasm under her skin.
Fire, ice, thunder, and more. The one who nearly killed you is a magister. Gifted, they abuse their awesome power to kill, conquer, and destroy. By their very nature, they want more than they should have, and currently, that is your homeland.
But why?
Their motives are tribal. Nationalistic, we call it back in my land. The Serviles seem to have made their move quickly as your fog fell. They likely move against the Rook. You all are just caught in the crossfire.
But I am Rook, you just said. They are here for us then.
They've hardly considered you. I worry neither your western nor eastern neighbours see it that way. I doubt you'll ever see yourself that way either. Although, if ever you did, you could melt away into the Rukanian borderlands and live well. Your uncle turns to violence to protect your homes. I do not believe this is a conflict that you can win, but a revolution is waged on all fronts if it is to be successful. This place is a shatter point, where the attention of the whole world is now shifting.
I do not fear it. I will face it. Reyth sneered and clapped her chest. We will win!
Quiet. Quiet. Careful what you wish for. Whether it's napalm, magister fire, or rain hitting your fighting hole. It's not the brave or strong who survive. It's the faithful and the fearful who keep their heads dry and out of the grave.
So you are a coward? Reyth scoffed, cut off by him covering her mouth to silence her growing laughter.
The coward who saved your life.
Then fight. Your power is...
Not unerring. Do not let what you saw earlier fool you.
Me a fool. Yes, the fool! You gonna get killed if you don't fight. Unscathed by her insult, Gregor finished the rest of his meat and cheese. This time it was her appetite that spited him, vanishing against the cowardliness within him, and she tossed the stiff food to the bugs. Then added, "A great warrior must be able to crush their enemies."
You've the drive of a natural leader, I'll admit, but willfulness in violence is not a solution, and is, in fact, the problem. If you take anything away from this, let it be the greatest warriors win without bloodshed, Wraith. A victory in the hearts and minds of your opponents is harder won, and often more permanent. I cannot win this battle, and will not make this most holy implement, the voice of God, a slave to my will, a slave to war. I am a servant of love forced into form by the greed in our hearts.
Blah, 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 you came to talk and talk while we die?
I have come to advise and render medical aid, among other things. It is not my intention to perpetuate a war. My reach has its limits. Myria may not scathe me, but its material residuals might. I can command the hearts of men, but the stronger their willpower, the weaker I am, and if my makers do not consent, I am powerless. The being who walks beside me, who lifted your sight and saved your life, is one of love. To make her take life again, I will not allow it. She has been through enough in her time, and a long time it has been.
Leaning back, he readied to rest, but not without fastening his bundle to his belt, with a silver chain affixed with a silver medallion, 3 bisecting rusted bars that he patted to say good night.